Back in Persia, his palace empty of family and friends, the fugitive King Darius hopes for a political solution. He offers to ransom his family with a peace treaty, gold, the hand of his daughter in marriage, and all the lands west of the Euphrates River. His offer is generous. The Greeks can return home conquering heroes with an empire stretching from the Balkans to Libya and as far east as the Euphrates. One of Alexander's most experienced generals, Parmenion, is delighted by the terms. If I was Alexander, he urges, I would accept the truce and end the war without further risk. So would I, Alexander scoffs, if I was Parmenion. Many of his men begin to wonder if their leader has finally gone too far. He's gambling all they won against the weight of the Persian Empire. When the armies meet, the battle will be fought by nearly 400,000 men. But it will hinge on the courage of only one. Alexander has rejected Darius's offer of ransom, setting the two adversaries on a collision course. The Persian king has little choice but to prepare for a decisive confrontation. Summoning all his troops from as far away as India and Afghanistan, he forms one vast imperial army of 300,000 men. The two armies converge at a place called Gorgamila. On the 20th of September, 331 BC, Alexander's forces, some 50,000 strong, march on the full might of the Persian Empire. After years of waiting, these two bitter rivals are finally poised for the ultimate showdown. Alexander signals his troops to turn and charge straight at Darius. Realizing that he is in grave danger, Darius once again loses his nerve. He turns and runs. Abandoned by their king, the Persians can find no reason to continue fighting. The victory belongs to Alexander. In the weeks following Gorgamila, Alexander marches to Babylon, then deep into Persia, to the great fortress city of Persepolis. At last he stands at the very heart of the empire that for more than a century has kept the Mediterranean under its yoke. But the civilization the Greeks scorn as barbaric is actually more advanced and sophisticated than their own. Before their eyes glitter magnificent palaces, ornate statuary, and gold. In Persepolis alone, Alexander reaps 120,000 talents of gold. In today's terms, about $60 billion. He gives much of it to his generals and the soldiers who marched with him all the way from Macedonia. Still, when the final accounting is done, he is the richest man in the world, probably the richest man in history. After 4 long years of campaigning, his troops are eager to go home. Fabulously wealthy, they will be celebrated heroes in Greece. But Alexander has unfinished business. Besides, his Persian empire stretches as far to the east as it does to the west. He wants to lay claim to the rest of what is rightfully his. On the eve of the expedition, Alexander lets loose his final revenge on the Persians who sacked and torched Athens a century and a half ago. His men set the palaces and great halls of Persepolis ablaze, reducing to ruins one of the architectural wonders of the ancient world. Alexander's conquest goes far beyond subjugation. He intends to colonize the East. Using the vast resources of his treasury, he builds 10 cities throughout Persia, Afghanistan, Turkestan, and India. In each, he leaves contingents of his entourage, planting seeds of Greek civilization thousands of miles from the Aegean Sea. His troops, now some 100,000 strong, meet little resistance. With no maps to guide them, the Macedonians are blind to the vastness that lies before them. Beyond the jungle awaits the unknown. The incessant rains of the monsoon are the last straw. They refuse to go further. In 324 BC, 3 years after the expedition set off, he delivers the ragged remnants of his army back to Persia. After months spent consolidating the empire and reorganizing his army, Alexander sets in motion the plans for a new invasion. This time he will expand his empire to the west by leading an assault into Arabia, North Africa, Sicily, and Italy. But before he can begin his next conquest, disaster finds the indestructible Alexander's Achilles heel. The man who has survived countless life-threatening battle wounds is struck down by a common disease, malaria. For days, between bouts of pain and a soaring temperature, Alexander meets with his generals to discuss plans for the invasion of Arabia. But as the end draws near, his men break down and weep. As Alexander's officers file past, each asks, "Who do you give the empire to?" The strongest is his enigmatic reply. But who among them could approach such genius and daring, or inspire such loyalty? Alexander died on June 10th, 323 BC. After 13 years of fighting, he had conquered 2 million square miles. But without his force of will and charisma to hold the empire together, it eventually began to crumble, torn apart by the squabbling of rival generals and petty kings. On the road to world conquest, Caesar and Napoleon would pay homage to the brilliant young general who set the standard for all future conquerors. From the Aegean to Afghanistan, he had marched 22,000 miles and never lost a battle. He planted the seeds of a culture full of vitality and new ideas, and left in his wake the roots of a new civilization. Builder of cities, warrior, emperor, hero, god. 2,300 years later, his name still carries thunder. Alexander the Great.